This is the space of our legislature. The individuals within the House of Commons and the Senate are those who directly or indirectly make that call to arms. So it's incredibly important that within this site there is a constant remembrance and tribute to that sacrifice. Very early on, there was a desire to commemorate those who were in service and, of course, those who had fallen. The Peace Tower was the last piece of center block that was built, and so the war had ended by that point. John Pearson, the architect, wanted there to be a space in the heart of this building that paid tribute to the fallen of that war. As you may know, in the First World War, when you were killed in battle, you were buried where you fell. So our Canadian war dead are in Belgium and in France. They were not brought home to Canadian soil. So it was incredibly important at that time period when there was so much devastation and almost every family in some way was connected either directly or indirectly to someone who had died, that there be a site for memory. This space in particular is a very special space to this building because it's made of completely different materials than the rest of the building. All of center block is constructed with Canadian materials. Inside this space, however, we see stone from Belgium, from France, and from England. The stone for the floor of the memorial chamber comes to us from battlefields in France and in Belgium. John Pearson went over to Europe and walked those battlefields and asked for stone to be unearthed and then brought back to Canada so that it could be incorporated into this incredibly beautiful, elaborate cross that we see here. The space was designed around the conflicts of the First World War, so anchoring the altar are these stones with indications of different major conflicts in which Canada saw battle and also saw incredible loss. It's not consecrated ground, so it's not hallowed in the sense of a religious space, but it definitely evokes that kind of feeling. The architect wanted you to almost happen upon it as a surprise, so he described it as a sacred grove. The columns go up several stories as though you're in a forest full of trees, and then all of a sudden you've come into a clearing, and within the clearing is the altar. So it is a space of contemplation, and it is a space of remembrance. For very many individuals, the names of their ancestors are here in this space. So there is definitely that feeling within the space that it is a special place and it is a place of honor. So initially, John Pearson had envisioned that the names of the fallen from the First World War would be inscribed on the walls of the memorial chamber. But by the time they got the full lists and they understood the extent of the devastating loss of that war, it was quickly determined that there wasn't enough space on the walls to actually put all of the names. So they had to come up with a different strategy that would allow for this individualized tribute. And this is a very democratic space, if you will, in that sense. Each name is treated with the same dignity and honor. So this is one of the volumes of the First World War Books of Remembrance. The First World War, the loss is unbelievably devastating. We had over 66,000 who were killed. So as you can imagine, one book wouldn't necessarily contain all of those names. But we've got them, we've got one of the pages on display right now, and then at 11 o'clock, when they come in and do the page turning ceremony, they will turn the page so that we will see another set of names. It's incredibly beautifully detailed and all done by hand. It's really a labor of love. These books took years and years to create. So the space was opened in 1927, and the First World War books were not finished at that time. It took 11 years for those books to be done. So if you can imagine, you know, the artist having to do all of this calligraphy one by one for the names. The stone for the altar is Hopton wood. This was a gift from Great Britain. And Hopton wood is described as a noble and silent stone. So it's uniquely, it has the attributes that make it a perfect echo of tribute and paying memorial to people. Within the walls, you have a huge combination of signs and symbols. So it's an incorporation of the symbols that people would be wearing or that they would call most to heart as they were away and serving for king and country, as we called it back then. There are three main stained glass windows. One is a call to arms, one is the actual battle, and then the other is an echo of turning your swords into plowshares. So we have to think about the time period in which the space was created. There are echoes very definitely of religious symbolism, but it's not meant specifically to be a religious space. There's this desire to sort of connect the valor that was shown on the battlefields of the First World War with the epic stories of the past. There's a sense here of a kind of passing on of the torch, call to remember, in a sense. And Pearson would have been aware at that time of John McCrae's poem. So it caught fire as a tribute very early on. And so there's a sense also at the time period we were just starting to have Remembrance Day. It wasn't as formalized as it is now. But this would have definitely been on the hearts and minds of individuals as they were thinking about this space and thinking of the decoration for this space. This is probably one of the most special spaces within this building because it really is the heart of the building, and it's entirely in keeping that within the heart of the building we pay the highest tribute, and with the utmost respect we say thank you to people who have given up their lives for this country. It's definitely a different experience to physically be in the room, to stand on ground that echoes the ground that they walked on, and to have a moment to be quiet and think about them.